Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Foley, roll call.
President Kaler, members of the board, please let the record show that all board members are present tonight.
Thank you very much. We are going to have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And I just want to keep in mind the Colin Karchner family. This gentleman was instrumental in speaking to kids across the United States when it comes to social media. And he passed away last night. So please keep his family in your thoughts and prayers.
President Kaler,
Yes.
I'd also like to keep in our thoughts and prayers the 221,941 people who have died as of today from our virus.
.1, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Foley, Superintendent's Report.
President Kaler, members of the board, we have some upcoming events for this month in the near future. We've got several meetings that are our regularly scheduled meetings. I'd like to draw attention to our November 20th will be our superintendent's visit. I'm happy to share with you that we have just received confirmation that Mayor Anderson and Vice Mayor Kaprowski will be joining us on this visit. So we're excited to have them come see the wonderful things that we have happening at our superintendent's visit at Williamsfield High School, which will be our first one this year.
That is very good news. Thank you. All right, board comments, 4.1. Any comments from the board?
President Kaler, I just understand we had our first homecoming football games. Would administration like to give us an update and share how things went? That would be wonderful.
Board Member Witovich, yes, we are happy to share a few updates from this week. I'm going to ask Mr. Latzenhauser to come up to the mic so that he can share with you, as the athletic director, some of the athletic events. He and I had the privilege of being able to attend both football games on Friday evening, and so we'd like to provide an update for you.
Great, thank you.
President Kaler, Board Member Witovich, yes, we did host 2 football games on Friday night, as well as we hosted volleyball. We had the Williamsfield on Wednesday night, was the Williamsfield versus Higley volleyball game at Higley High as well. So we were able to host all 3 events, and I want to give a shout out to our community because we're taking the masks very seriously. What I was very, very pleased about, because I wonder just the same as you, when we go, who are they going to be following along, and are they going to be respectful? And yes, for the most part, they are. We've had a few that we've had to go up and remind and ask to put on their masks, and we haven't had to remove anyone yet, but that will be a possibility if they're not following along and complying. I think when you, and for those of you who were there on the Friday nights, the general feeling from our community was they were very, very happy and thankful that they were able to attend an event on our campus, and there was some sense of normalcy about how it was.
Anticipate any changes from the Arizona Athletic Association or anything in the future as we start doing these events? I mean, is it taking...
So we just had a meeting today. David Hines, the director of the AIA, had a meeting with all of the athletic directors and basically outlined that we're going to continue with the status quo and what we're doing through the football season. They reminded us that for the winter sports, the districts still need to meet the metrics in order to be able to start the winter sports. And so that decision day is going to be November 5th, with the idea that practice would start on November 9th. We went through the different tournaments that are going to go on at the end of the season and how AIA is going to do that. For football, they're going to use the same program we're using, GoFan, for ticketing, so it's going to be paperless ticketing, limiting of events, the number of people who are at the events, and those are outlined by basically the capacity of the sites that are going to be hosting them. Because of the condition of our stadiums, the AIA has asked that both Williams Field and Higley High be host for smaller level 1A, 2A, or 3A football games if the need arises. And so we're preparing to do those as well. I think this is a really tenuous time because as you guys read in the paper and we read that there are programs where they have had multiple kids that have had COVID on the teams, where they've had to shut down teams for weeks in quarantine. We're continuing to monitor ours very closely and are prepared, if the need be, out of caution, that we will close our teams and quarantine them and do at the direction of the county health and what we feel is good for caution. That is an ongoing, honestly, daily conversation we're having with Jillian Fulton, the district nurse, our athletic directors. The coaches are heavily involved, and I think the hard part is these kids are so invested in what they're doing, and we don't want the acts of just a few to ruin the many. And so if there's anything that I could publicly say is please be cognizant and aware of what we do on the weekends when you're not in a supervised event from us, because those actions have direct implications on all of the hard work that our athletes have put forward to have these seasons right now. Because, we don't want to go into a situation where everything gets closed completely. But just to reiterate, I'm very pleased with how our management team took very seriously the requirement of masks and the ticketing and the management, and at the same time providing an experience where parents didn't feel like they were completely removed from the atmosphere of the event. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lotzenheiser. Appreciate that.
President Kaler,
Yes, Mrs. Reese.
I too was able to attend both football games Friday night, and I agree. I mean, everyone seemed to be following the rules, and everyone seemed to be glad to be there. So thank you for continuously making sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. I also want to give a shout out to Dr. Foley. So on Saturday, we had our board evaluation, which we do annually, and the commitment that Dr. Foley has shown to our district, just this quick. We met on Saturday, had our evaluation, had a lot of great discussion, and it was at that meeting we talked about the superintendent visits and seeing who else in the community may want to be invited to these events to see and showcase our district schools. We just talked about it on Saturday. Dr. Foley just announced, today it's Wednesday, that we do have Town of Gilbert officials coming to this visit. So I appreciate your commitment and diligence to not just our district and our schools, our town, to invite our town representatives to see what we have. Sometimes Higley's kind of the forgotten child within Gilbert, and a lot of times people don't understand there's Gilbert Public Schools and Higley Unified, and we're all in the same town. So, I mean, just that quick, thank you. I appreciate taking that feedback and those suggestions and turning it around. So I really appreciate that. And then just a quick reminder, as we've come back from fall break and we're trying to make sure everyone's safe, and we know a lot of people were traveling. I just want a reminder that the Maricopa County Community or Public Health defines an outbreak of 2 or more cases. So if someone is hearing there's an outbreak somewhere, whether it's within our district, whether it's in another district, that literally could mean 2 cases, and they call it an outbreak. So I just want to put some perspective on that if the news is reporting that there's some outbreak, haven't heard anything about our district, but we're going to go over it a little bit later. We have our dashboard, but please, I'm just asking people keep that in mind, that they do define that as 2 or more cases, but it could be as little as 2 cases on a campus that they could classify as an outbreak. So, but everyone's doing a fabulous job. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reese. And on that same note, I know that Dr. Foley and I are going to a Queen Creek Chamber of Commerce event that we already signed up for as well. So we're going to do what we said, right? We're going to do what we said. And also on that same note, November 5th is the Gilbert Veterans Day celebration, and they're doing it at the new park this year, and they're doing it at evening. So that's also coming up if anybody can attend, so. Okay.
President Kaler?
Yes,
just one
Mr. Glover.
thing. We mentioned a lot of dates in November, but there's one really important one. It's November 3rd is coming up, so
I
Social
think we're
Studies
all
guy
scared.
has to remind, I mean, if anybody hasn't voted yet, please vote, and all the way down the ticket. No offices are too small or too unimportant to vote for, so get your ballots in. If you live in Maricopa County and you have a paper ballot, you can sign up on the county recorder, and they will email you or text you when they have received your ballot, and then they will also do the same when they have counted your ballot. And so you can feel comfortable and confident in our democracy.
Great reminder. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to 6.0, consent agenda items. I move that we approve consent agenda items 6.1 to 6.10. Questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Glover.
Just one. I just wanted to give some praise and thanks. In item 6.2, there's some elementary teacher additional duties. There's a stipend in there, and I appreciate the cabinet and the superintendent for working on that on behalf of our elementary teachers. Oftentimes, I have found, in my experience, that elementary teachers will very often do something without complaint and without compensation. They just do it. But this is a case, just out of the goodness of their heart. But this is a case where they were doing extra work, and Higley saw fit to compensate them for that. I think that follows along with our plan of honoring our teachers, and especially in a year where people are very stressed out. To know that their work is honored and their time is honored by the district is really good, and I thank you for doing that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Glover, and thank you for always advocating for our teachers in that area. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. 7.1, any questions or comments for Mr. Gadd tonight on our financial report? Well, that was easy, Mr. Gadd. Gotta like that. Okay, 7.2, we are going to review our fiscal year proceeds of capital improvement bonds, maintenance and operations, override data, and a presentation. And is that going to be Dr. Fowler? Is it Dr. Fowler? No.
President
Mr.
Kaler,
Gadd.
members of the board.
Sorry.
We're going to pull up this attachment, and Mr. Gadd is going to give some details, and additional information will also be provided by Dr. Fowler as well, if questions arise.
Madam President, members of the board, this report is required annually by law to reflect what the district spent last year on its M&O and bond budgets. The M&O listing, as you can see, has the 5 bullet points that was provided to the voters in the pamphlet. The teacher compensation increase is in the neighborhood of 7 to 8% for teachers that has been added to the salary schedule and would not have been added had the override not been available. The elementary specials would be art, music, and PE, the maintenance of those programs at the elementary level. Reduce average class size. Our calculations show basically this offers 2 per classroom as a reduction. So instead of having 28, you would have 26. So that's basically how you quantify that. The all-day kindergarten is, of course, roughly half of the teachers that we have providing all-day K, and that's fundable. Those halves turning into a full-time kindergarten class are about 20 of them at $1.4 million. And then just general resources to the classroom, including supplies, miscellaneous kinds of things, copiers, all of that sort of thing that that would be usable by the teacher, probably supplemental to what they may have been used to in the past. So that is the summary of our M&O override, totaling $11.6 million for last year. I can stop there, or I can move on to the lower part.
I was just going to say, Mr. Gadd, I love that you said there was 78% for our teachers. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
The proposed capital improvements are listed there, just as they were listed in the pamphlet initially. The bond election was for $70 million. And you can see the dollar amounts that were set aside for each of those categories were the estimated costs. The big emphasis would be on new school construction and on maintenance. Those are the two that would occupy much of the total. Expenditures, in most cases to date, through 6/30/2020, are below the estimated costs. A couple of them exceed the estimated costs, but not by a whole lot. And they are more than offset by those where we have underexpended some categories significantly. So at this point in time of the $70.5 million bond, we have spent $60.6 million, and we have $9.9 million left in the treasurer's office in cash. So the plan now will be for this year, probably most of the $9 million will be committed through your approval in some way, because we're getting toward the end of this program. So we'll have more detail for you about that when we move ahead with our budget preparation that will be coming your way in November. So you'll get to see some of what the plan is at this point. And it's also important to note that this particular budget has the ability to spend 10% more than was authorized in the bond on anything that was not on the list, as long as you've accomplished the list. So in this particular case, the way you would apply that is 70 million would be 7 million that you could spend of the 9, and it would be not necessarily anything that's on this list, as long as you were comfortable that you had completed the original list as portrayed in the pamphlet. So any questions the board may have, happy to try to answer them.
President Kaler, I wanted to add, just in terms of the number, the 9.941 that shows as a balance, that's reflecting bond money that had been expended up to the end of last year. It doesn't reflect bond items that were encumbered for this current fiscal year. And so as the board is well aware, we spent $1 million on the media centers in bond. And we've also encumbered $3.7 million in bond for the athletic center at Williamsfield. And so that 9.9 number is a little deceiving because that those big encumbered items aren't taken off on there. And there's a couple other littler ones too. And so we can have that detail specifically so we know exactly what that amount is. But I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gadd or Dr. Fowler? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Now we are going to have a little chat about our COVID dashboard. Dr. Foley.
President Kaler, members of the board, I'm going to ask that we're going to follow that link on the agenda there so that we can pull up our beautiful dashboard. So at our last board meeting on September 23rd, we had talked and had heard from our community and from our board members about we wanted to explore a dashboard for our community in addition to our communication protocols. And if you'll scroll down, thank you, one of the things I wanted to highlight about our dashboard that I'm real proud of. First of all, I really want to thank Jillian Fulton, our district nurse, Brian Campbell, our student information manager, and Cassie Robles and Spencer Schmidt from our PR department spent hours over fall break with Sherry, David, and I in our other home away from home, the Ed Services conference room. brainstorming, how do we create a dashboard that will be something that is transparent, that will give information. One of the things I want to highlight is we have a lot of information on our dashboard, but one of the things I think I really appreciate about ours that you will see different than others is that we are updating our dashboard daily. Every morning by 10 a.m. it is being updated. Any student increase as far as numbers of people who are on site, students or staff are updated right from our student information system, as well as any confirmed active cases. You'll also notice we do something on our dashboard that others are not doing, which is showing the resolved cases, so that, because one of the things we know is that in any given day, based upon the status of where that is at, it either could be an active case or a resolved case, but the number today could look different tomorrow, and we wouldn't want to confuse people. If we said a number was 7 today and it was 4 tomorrow, it would look like, where did those numbers go? So all the numbers are being shared up there when they are moved, and Jillian is working closely with tracking each and every one of these scenarios with the health department on what day it goes active to when it goes resolved, so that it moves. Board Member Reese, I want to build on something you said earlier, going with the idea of an outbreak. One of the things we're finding as we navigate this with the Arizona Department of Health Services here is that every scenario is just a little bit different. And when they are defining numbers alone, the number 2 is whether it's epidemiologically linked or not. So you could have 2 or 3, and you're going, why haven't they deemed it yet an outbreak? And it all comes down to that contact tracing and being linked. And so we are becoming friends with and have worked very hard with the health department on certain scenarios and situations. One of the things that we will share with you is that we are erring on the side of over communication than under communication, so that when we hear a confirmed case, we're communicating with our protocols and updating it here, and then if they come back and deem it an outbreak status, you'll receive additional communication. So again, it can feel we're gonna err on the side of over communicate than not, and we're gonna take precautions as they come forward. The other thing I would want to do a shout out to Jillian is that she is working really hard with administration and site to follow up on supposed cases as opposed to confirmed cases, and trying to maintain the health and wellness of what we know when we know it. What's important to know about our dashboard is that these are going to be for cases that are in person on campus that would have been in our building with exposure to others, not those who, again, if we get a confirmed, while we track them, if we had a person who was an online student only, who we had a positive case, because we'll confirm every positive case, we track that, but it won't go in the number because they had no exposure. There's nobody in this to communicate with as far as our communication structure. So this is in addition to, not in place of. We have gotten good feedback, and we're going to continue to use this, but wanted to show and share for our community our dashboard. You'll also notice on our website that you can't miss it now. It's front and center. We have our COVID resources that we're updating, so that you can find it easily. So we appreciate everyone's feedback, and I really appreciate the work of our amazing team trying to respond and provide resources up front. So again, you will continue to see this be updated.
Thank you, Dr. Foley. Go ahead, Mr. Glover.
You sure? Okay. Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Foley. It's a good update. I think it looks really nice. I think it has good info. It seems really weird to complement a web page of infectious diseases, but here we are. I love that it has the resolved cases. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that it's updated daily, because the thing about, what Maricopa County requires, it's so unsatisfying, because there are teachers who are literacy coaches and math coaches, and there's office staff, and there's people that just, I don't want to say wander, that's the wrong word, but are in our building and amongst our kids, and they're not really required to be notified, but they can now look on this and feel a little bit comfortable about knowing where they're going and what they're getting into. And it's too bad that at our level, we have to be the ones to do this, but you know what? It's so typical of teachers. When the job's not getting done, teachers will do it. So anyway, I thank everybody for all the work and thought that went into this, and it's a far cry from where we were, and I think it's good, and we're all learning and getting better. Thanks.
We are learning. President Kaler, Board Member Glover, I appreciate the feedback. Again, we're learning and we're responding. You'll notice one of the other things we added up there was also a frequently asked questions, because we're also noticing there's some patterns and trends, and we're updating information to help answer questions. So we encourage, again, if in doubt, don't delay. Just reach out to us and we'll help answer the question as fast as we can with that information as accurately as we can. We do need the caution I do say, though, is that we are responding as quickly as we can as we know information, but we also have to work really closely with the health department. That sometimes can take a little longer than what all of us would want, and yet that is an official part and piece of this too. So again, we're going to continue to over-communicate what we know when we know it. And we appreciate everybody's communication with us along the way.
Dr. Foley, I'd just like to tell you I've heard a lot of positive responses out in the community and for all the hard work, and I really do like the tabs on the side too as well. So thank you once again.
I echo these sentiments. Dr. Foley, so if a student comes in though with a positive case, that they have it or they submit it to the nurse, does that go on here directly, or does it still have to wait to go through Maricopa County?
They will confirm, President Kaler, good question. They will confirm that case, but we will start the process of tracing, communication, and getting it in the queue ready to go so that we can communicate it and formalize it. Because again, Jillian spends a majority of her day at this point on the phone and following up so that we get the information as quickly as we can.
And the thing is, at least now I know testing is coming back quicker. So at least we can say that it's much faster than it was even when school started. It was still a week or so for test results, and now people I'm hearing within 24 to 48 hours are getting test results.
And one of the things that you'll hear Jillian will ask the person to do is to send her a copy of that so that she has an official documentation, so we can start our process while we're finalizing it, but then we don't start it after we've gotten a confirmation. We're ready to go and know who needs to be communicated with and to what extent.
Well, it was beautifully done. I, too, really appreciate the resolved cases so that the numbers are very clear. And just a little reminder, if you're not feeling well, stay home. If you're being tested, stay home. We can't say that enough right now, because we're headed into a very, again, as Mr. Lotzenheiser says, these are tenuous times, and now we're going to add the flu. And so just a good reminder, stay home if you're not feeling well.
And if I could
Yes,
also,
Mr. Glover.
there, right on this page, there is a place that shows you where you can go to get tested. We are starting to see at some other schools outside of Higley that I know about, some kids who are walking around asymptomatic that do test positive. So, if you're feeling symptoms and you get tested, yes, of course, stay home. But if you just feel like you want to go tested to have peace of mind, we should have been doing this way ahead of time for like massive amounts of people, and we still should. So go get tested. You can do it for free, and I also want to complain about contact tracing. We're terrible about this so far, and we should be way far ahead. So contact tracing, I think, is one of the things that could have helped to get us out ahead, but also massive amounts of testing for people just to know, so they're not carrying something around without knowing it and spreading it. So those two things can really help, and we can only get better.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on to 7.4. This is the first read only. I move that the governing board approves the first read of policy IJOA and its optional student travel.
Second.
Questions, comments, or concerns with this policy? I'm glad it's just a first read. It's good to soak in. It's good to read it and then read it again. So I'm glad that this is just our first read tonight. So, Mrs. Reese.
Thank you. Ms. Martins, has this been talked about at all in Meet and Confer?
President Kalar, Vice President Reese, members of the board. In regards to the specifics of this travel policy, no, because when we initiated it last spring, we never came back from school start. So our first Meet and Confirm meeting as of right now is scheduled for October 27th, so it's next Tuesday afternoon. Certainly something that I could talk with Dr. Foley, as well as Mr. Watzenheimer, and we can talk about the topics of that and have a discussion from there.
And I know there was a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of people involved in trying to come up with a good, solid policy where people could know exactly what they need to do for student travel. If it was moved on to administration, there was essentially check marks. Yes, they meet this. No, they don't. To remove some of the confusion that occurred with our policy as it is. So I just didn't know, and yep, we worked on it, and then we weren't here. So I would like that there at least be some discussion and some review, and to get some feedback. I get it. A lot of this policy too is from an operational standpoint and coverage, but if we can look at that, I would be interested in some of that feedback.
President Kaler, Vice President Reese, we appreciate that. Truly, this was work that started last year. There was committee that was brought forth. You, as a governing board, had a work study on this at the end of February, and then we went into COVID crisis management and school closures. So truly, this is bringing back the work that was discussed there in a more formal process that we had conversation of that we're going to operationalize. We will happily take this to our group back for additional feedback as we look at the operationalizing of the forms and process here. And to the extent, too, that obviously this was going to be in place for when all normal travel can resume, because these are filters and processes that will be in place when we're not sometimes modifying what the event or experience looks like. Because, again, some of the travel that we would have historically approved aren't travelable at this particular point in time. However, the processes and systems we're working on putting in place.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, and we will look forward to that coming back in November. 7.5, I move that the governing board approves future payments not to exceed $128,520 to Hacienda Los Niños for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Questions or comments? Mr. Glover? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did I hear Mr. Glover? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on. I move, this is going to be 7.6. I move that the governing board approves the second disbursement of results-based funding dollars. And Mrs. Martins, this was, again, I know you covered, we had a lot of information in our update of we send in questions for the board packet, but just for the sake of the community, we did forget a few people. Maybe not forgot, but they were in a different list, and so we're just making that right.
Certainly, Vice President Kaler, members of the board, essentially, we did disperse our first amount of dollars back in June for all of our employees, and traditionally, we had what we call our educational professionals, so our psychologists, our speech language pathologists, our occupational therapists, as well as our CTE and EVIT liaison fall underneath those categories. And historically, they've been labeled as district level employees. And when we had dispersed the dollars in the previous 2 years, they were dispersed with district level employees. So when district level employees did not meet the criteria after additional guidance from attorneys that the district sought out, we discovered that they were included in that list. And then when we went back to get some additional clarification, they said that we could include them. So we are going to change our practices. And so these educational professionals are no longer listed as district employees and that they're assigned to a home site. And traditionally they are. And just like teachers, they can get moved depending on the year and the need for our various areas. So we're also going to look at some process changes Unfortunately, because we distributed most of the money, a significant amount of the money, back in June, we only have a limited budget left. And based on the number of employees, as well as the budget remaining, we're looking at distributing $375 per employee. So after the board's approval tonight, then we will look to start the process to get it paid out within. I have to verify our payroll processing period. I can't think of what payroll we're in right now off the top of my head, but we'll make sure to communicate with the employees when they can anticipate those dollars.
Thank you very much. Mr. Glover?
Well, I just, again, thank you. You know, when you get, I don't want to say, but I would speculate that most people are not fans of results-based funding. We're always happy to get the money. But what I like that Higley does differently than many other places is it's really not just one class. It can never only be one classroom teacher that when a school has significant gains or good results. It's the collective effort of everyone that's on the campus. So acknowledging that, as Higley does, I'm very proud to be a part of that. I'm proud that Higley is taking the lead on that. You know, there's speech pathologists, ELL teachers, math coaches, literacy coaches, even school psychologists, all contribute to the welfare and helping to upbring these students in the schools. So I appreciate it.
I'm with you, Mr. Glover. I'm not a huge fan, but I do like the way that Higley's worked really hard on results-based funding to make it somewhat equitable across the whole district. So I'm with you on that one, Mr. Glover. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. I move, we're on to 7.7, that the governing board ratifies the 2020-2021 Memorandum of Understanding between the Higley Unified School District and the Higley Education Association.
Second.
That's fine. Questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Wow, that was quick. We are moving on to 8.1. Here are some items that we still have coming up in November on the calendar. We have course guides coming and textbook adoption process, update on our media centers, and then we still have our athletics coming. Anything else that anybody would like to add to this list? Mr. Glover?
So sorry. I feel like it's, like the very first year when I was just talking.
You better still be here when this comes to us then,
No,
okay? Whatever you're going to say.
I'm going to be a hypocrite for a second. On one hand, I wanted to say, in regards to one of the earlier things we passed, is that we should be cognizant always of the amount of work that we're adding to teachers. And this year of all years, we really should be asking the question a lot: what can we take away to simplify things for teachers? So that's a separate item that I wanted to say, and I'm going to do the complete opposite. It's October now. I know we did talk about that list of approved curriculum on our district website. I know we're all super busy, but I really would, before I leave here, I have 3 more meetings, that gets done.
I know that was your main request, was to have that on our website up and running before Mr. Glover retires. So is that in the plans, Dr. Foley?
Yes, President Kaler, Board Member Glover, I am so looking forward to bringing to you several things on this upcoming agenda on the 4th. You're going to see, one, a handbook for the textbook adoption process. You're going to see an example of what it looks like, and you're going to see what when we're talking about our list of supplementals, we're going to talk a little about the distinction between our supplementals and our adoptions and our lists and how we're tracking them. And it's all part of this presentation that we're going to do for you coming up. So I am delighted to have that ready for you. And we've been working really hard. And I would like to do a big shout out to Felicia Malloy, who has been working on this with our content coaches and myself. We have been meeting weekly multiple times so that we have a comprehensive piece to bring to you with our policies, our practice, and a template. So it will come.
Mr. Glover loves the word supplemental.
We
We're going to miss you. We're going to miss you. Okay. Well, with that, my friends, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Have a great evening.